Welcome into the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We are, of course, a Blue Wire podcast. Joining me today, Box 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I'm doing peachy, James, Brenden, enjoying the offseason, except now we got football to kind of distract me a little bit and for another month and a half until NBA camps open up. So a nice change of pace, but certainly enjoying this offseason. How about you guys?
Good. We are also joined by Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, look at you with your A's hat on today.
I know.
Yeah,
hello. Yeah, a little embroidery on it, I guess. Bought it this way. Did not get it custom. It is a hummingbird.
Flare.
One time I went out with some buddies wearing this hat, and may or may not random people called me hummingbird the whole night. But yeah, nothing special. No deeper meaning.
You stuck with the bit.
I could be a hummingbird. That's fine.
Oh.
I don't know what that means exactly. Hopefully there's not a deeper meaning here. You're looking at me sideways or something, but
Google's what does hummingbird mean? Okay. That's okay, Brenden. Like, good for you. Hummingbird
sure.
hat.
Yeah. Nothing special.
I'm sure Sean just is as happy as Kenny Caraway is about the Giants trade deadline.
James.
Trade deadline.
James, what are we doing? What do we? It's like you had a switchboard of buttons that you could just press right now to really get Sean going, and you pushed like two of them simultaneously. I have thoughts, but I guess I can save them. It's just a weird time to be a Giants fan. Look, I say that fully knowing what A's fans are going through, so I get it. But yeah, man, frustrating. It's frustrating.
Is it just the fact that they were sellers?
No, how about the fact that we're gonna ship off your free agent Jorge Soler, who has had a bad season, send him to his natural home back in Atlanta, and then all of a sudden your GM, who hasn't been able to land diddly squat over the past however many years he's been there, decides to say that 35-year-old Mark Canha is the perfect addition to the Giants at this deadline, but still has expectations of the playoffs. I'm not saying the expectations for the playoffs should be completely like insane a concept for him and his team, because look, they went after players like Robbie Ray, who they knew weren't going to be available until right around now because he was hurt. You added Blake Snell to that, who's been hurt, and he's kind of coming into his own finally. But my God, man, like you've had some homegrown talent that has come up, and you get a little bit of credit for that. But it's just typical. You can't add. I mean, Mark Canha, with respect to him, I mean, that dude's washed, absolute washed. Like, if you can bring him off the bench every now and then, sure. I mean, I know Bob Melvin wanted him, but it's just frustrating, man. And they can't ever land the big fish. And the one fish that they did land, they ship him off. Blake Snell almost got traded. They kept him. What are you doing? It's like, there's just doesn't make sense.
I knew I'd get
change. Things change month to month, and it's anyway. Go ahead. Let's continue.
I knew that would get under your skin. Okay, let's just take care of the business side. Number one, if you're watching here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. Wherever you're listening to the podcast, give us a rating review. Jump on board with the Kings Beat, become a premium subscriber, get everything sent directly to your inbox. We are going to have an off the record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour next Thursday. I'm still booking a guest, but we will have something, and I'll send out a notification this weekend on who we have for the festivities. But I think it's going to be next Thursday, probably. But yeah, I'll have all the specifics sent out to you. Outside of that, I think I think this kind of leads into like the Giants conversation, leads into a bigger conversation about sort of the Sacramento Kings and where they are. We're in the dog days of summer, so it's a little quiet. The team did add Boogie Ellis this last week, which is, again, like more of a camp invite with a potential to maybe make the team or maybe play in Stockton this year, which is fine. But most of the heavy lifting might be done at this point. I don't know. It's been a little bit quiet. Where are you guys at with the direction of the build? How do you think they did this summer versus what we've seen? Sort of the last year plus was a little quiet. They made some moves. Did they do enough? Do you think that they're in the right direction? Where are you at with sort of now that we know that the offseason is pretty much completed, at least for today? Like there's always something random that could happen, but I'll start with you, Sean. Where are you at with that idea?
Well, yeah, I mean, they get credit for sure. I mean, they've upgraded their talent. In DeMar DeRozan, you've added a third piece, a dynamic scorer, someone who can absolutely take pressure off of Sabonis and Fox, even at his advanced age. I mean, this is a guy who hasn't sustained a major injury in his life, and a guy who come off, a situation where he's led the league in minutes, and he's obviously a fourth quarter scorer, and this is the absolute piece that they needed to make. Now, granted, it's not Larry Markin and it's not Brandon Ingram, but it's the next best thing and a much more cheaper option as well that gives them flexibility going forward that doesn't really interfere with too much. It shouldn't anyway, with the development of Keegan Murray, possibly what he could attract in the open market later on. And you didn't, I mean, with respect to those players that left, you didn't really give up anything to upgrade that talent. We talked about that in recent weeks, but you couple that with the re-signing of Malik Monk, which I don't think people give the Kings enough credit for. Maybe don't give Malik Monk as much credit for, because he could have certainly commanded more money on the open market, and they kept him from doing so. Just by virtue of those two players being on next year's squad, adding another playmaker in DeRozan, a prolific scorer, we talked about that. You really haven't addressed maybe some of the length and size limitations that this team has, but you certainly have added a talent upgrade. And to me, you get credit for that. And it's not, for where they are right now, this is fine. We're in August 1st. We just hit August 1st as we record this podcast. And, your roster looks dramatically different. I think this is what we were expecting, that the roster would look dramatically different from a month ago when the free agency period opened up, and it's been a hell of a month. And especially when you kind of factor in Devin Carter, and granted, he's not going to be available till January, maybe the earliest, but that's a hell of a piece to add to this unit. So certainly it's a little discombobulated. I don't think there's the greatest roster balance if the season were to start today, but the season doesn't start today, and they've got plenty of time to do something. And even if the season did start today, it's not a finished product. It never is. So they have plenty of time to still address some of the needs that this team kind of, obviously desires, but certainly adding that prolific scoring piece with Sabonis and Fox looked to be kind of at a premium, kind of at the priority for these guys. And I think Kings fans can probably sit back and go, well, at least it's not a guy like Zach LaVine, where the money is just so high and maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze there. Remains to be seen what happens with somebody like Jeremy Grant. Kind of let my feelings known on what I feel about Jeremy Grant and his contract and his production. But
yes, you have.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the type of movement that the Kings had to do with the way the West has evolved. And I think there's a little question mark over the Sacramento Kings heading into next season. I don't think it's nearly as big as some of the other teams like the Lakers, the Grizzlies, maybe even you factor in the Clippers a little bit there. Certainly everyone wants to see what this team is capable of, but I think, it wouldn't surprise anybody to see this team be a top 4, 5, 6 seed in the West. But if they ended up down in the play-in tournament, I think that would be a little bit disappointing based on some of the moves that they have made. So I think this progress is great for where the Kings are right now. By numbers wise, you're pretty much done, so to speak, in terms of you're filled to your capacity, but you don't have to be. And there's still a lot of offseason left, so it'd be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm with you on the wide range of outcomes for this team. Like in my mind, like you're saying, potentially home court advantage in the first round if things pan out. Best case, I do think there's also a world where they are fighting in the play-in, and it speaks to the variance of potential outcomes with this Kings team. And I think being a team that is very reliant on your offense can lead to some inconsistencies at times. I still don't know how much to buy the defense. They seem to be leaning a lot into, oh, well, they allow us to pretty much beat up the other team out there now and call it a lot less. And they were 9th in defense post All-Star break. And I'm not, I don't feel like you can sit here and say DeRozan's a big downgrade over Harrison Barnes defensively. I know there's some size stuff there. You'll put a little bit more pressure on Keegan Murray. Hopefully Keon Ellis can continue to develop. But I think that trying to get back to what your strengths were in the year prior, when you were a 3 seed, when you were the best offense in the league, and getting to the free throw line more, obviously, with DeMar DeRozan, I think would be a big thing, and knocking them down when you get there. Kings were 30th in the league last year in free throw percentage. And if you're in a game close and it's a clutch scenario, you got 2 of the best guys in the league for that. So I still do have a lot of defensive questions, and I think that there's a world where it could look pretty tough on certain nights defensively specifically, and postseason wise, I think is more when some of those questions would really show their face, along with some of the spacing stuff that I wonder about a little bit, but just still kind of TBD, need to see it there. But a really wide variety of outcomes in my mind, which I think also speaks to the state of the West. Like, Dallas isn't your typical team to make it out of a conference.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, I think the West is wide open. And a couple of things, like, between Sean, what you said, like, I really like the addition of Devin Carter, but I'm pretty bummed out that we're not going to get to see Devin Carter. We might not see Devin Carter this season. I mean, in all honesty, like the 6 to 8 month range, they're going to evaluate him in January, and that's when we'll at least get maybe somewhat of an update, but maybe not. And even at that point, you're really deep into the season. I think that if you had Devin Carter, I would be feeling a lot more confident about this team as of today. I do think that they upgraded. I think that there's no question that DeMar DeRozan is a better player than Harrison Barnes. Like what Brenden you said about the defense stuff, man. Harrison Barnes allowed opponents to shoot like 41 point something percent from 3 last season, and DeMar DeRozan held his guy to like 34% from 3. Now sometimes that's just some guys get hot, and the Kings were bad defending the arc last year. But also, I don't think that it's that much of a defensive downgrade to go to DeRozan. I am slightly concerned about like the lack of 3-point shooting, but also adding a guy who shoots 17 times a game versus a guy who shot 9 times a game, 8.9, something like that for Harrison Barnes last year. And what does that mean for the rest of the team? What does that mean for Sabonis or De'Aaron Fox or Keegan Murray or Malik Monk? Those shots have to come from somewhere. You don't just manufacture an extra like 8 shots a game, 9 shots a game. So yeah, I think that there's some things that Mike Brown has to figure out, but overall, I think that talent upgrade is pretty substantial, and I do like the direction they're going. This is a question I asked my boy Kyle today on the Insiders, but when you look at the addition of DeMar DeRozan, do you feel like it just created a window where the Kings window was probably like 5 to 6 years right here, maybe a little bit more, where you can build and you can change things, but really this is sort of the window you're looking at. And when you bring in DeRozan, you're looking at a 2 or 3 year window. So you may have shrunk your window down a little bit, or am I overthinking that?
I think that you could pivot off of DeRozan still after the fact. Sean, I think you're muted, by the way. But I think that you could still pivot after the fact. Like right now, you didn't give up much to go get DeRozan. I might feel a little differently than you guys do about the pick swap down the line, but that's still very TBD, obviously. And you didn't mess with your step-in rules down the line if you were trying to make another big swing. So DeMar seems like a good middle ground in my mind of, you do make yourself better now and put yourself in a window, I guess, of sorts, but you're not, there's still a whole house and more windows after the fact in my mind that you could build up if you wanted to eventually pivot off of DeRozan, as I attempt to make a horrible metaphor.
A whole house.
Yeah.
How big of a house is this house? You're
The
At
whole
least
house
two
of
windows.
windows.
At least two windows.
No, I mean I agree. The window to me isn't more specifically for the Kings, like because I mean let's be honest, I'm trying to be nice here, but they haven't done shit. You know, they haven't done anything. So
No.
what are you talking about in terms of? I don't mean you, Brendan, but like the window to me is more so with DeMar DeRozan as it pertains to him. He has a window. I think there was already this kind of window in the sense of, you know, Fox and Sabonis and how the pairing works and ultimately what can come of that, but I don't look at them as contenders at all. So I think window implies contenders in a way, or contending for ultimately the ultimate goal. But I think the window is really what can you do with DeMar DeRozan in this 2 to 3 year stretch. So yes, I do think they have created a quote unquote window, but it's only as it pertains to DeRozan. I think there again is a timeline, if you will, that they have for Fox and Sabonis together. And you hope to factor in guys like Keegan Murray, Malik Monk, now DeRozan. But as to Brendan's point, like you have your draft capital, and with respect to 2031, who gives a shit? That does not matter whatsoever. It does not matter. You know, this you got to spend money to make money, right? And that's all you had to basically give up. And if that's really your most appealing piece with respect to Chris Duarte and Harrison Barnes and even the you know the space saving moves that they made with Toronto, who cares? I mean, these are pieces that were tertiary pieces for the most part on your team that you know put and crumpled up into a garbage ball and threw it away and got a piece like DeMar DeRozan who can absolutely perform at the highest level still. And your biggest piece in my mind that you gave up was Harrison Barnes, and we know that he's been in the crosshairs of Kings fans for the better part of 4 years or 5 years, however long he's been here. As a guy who every year we wake up and we're like thinking, no, you're here. Every media day we look at Harrison Barnes and I have to ask the same question. You a little surprised to be here? And he usually smiles. His expression usually says more than his words at that point, and says, no, it's good to be here. So you've moved on from that. I won't have to ask that question on media day, fortunately.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like the DeMar DeRozan stuff aside, like we can look at this team and say, look, everyone's 25, 26, 27. You're kind of moving together. We understand like how long that team can, we don't know their ceiling or how far they can go, but we understand like how long you can kind of keep that core together before, players get old, players start to leave, whatever. That's more of what I meant by window. I don't think I mean the championship window because like this team isn't there yet, and until we see them functioning, who knows? But I certainly think that like you created more urgency to do something, to create something now, because you only have 2 or 3 years of DeMar DeRozan, and you need to take advantage of that because that's going to go very fast.
Yeah.
Like really, really quick. I mean, people forget like Harrison Barnes was here 5 years. Like it doesn't seem like it was that long, and I guess to some people it might seem like it was 12 years. But De'Aaron Fox is 2017. He's entering his 8th season. Like these 2 or 3 years with DeMar DeRozan are going to go super fast, and if you don't take advantage of it, you don't add the pieces around him to get you over the top or at least put you in a conversation, then I'm not sure what you really did the move for in the end, outside of winning more games than you had the last year, the year before. When you look at DeRozan and his play style, what he brings to the table, the fact that he averaged 24 points a game last season, I have a tough time believing he's going to average 24 on this particular Kings team. But it does kind of change maybe the player that you would chase if you were to make another substantial move, at least in my mind. Am I off with that? Because the way I'm kind of looking at this is, again, Kyle Kuzma would have been a player that you really thought, okay, that would be a big splash, or Lauren Marketing. But these are guys who are averaging 20 plus points per game. And if you factor in what DeRozan brings and your hope that Keegan Murray will advance, I'm not sure that you need the same level of talent or level of score to go alongside those guys like maybe you did before. So as opposed to a Kyle Kuzma, maybe a Cam Johnson does make more sense, or Dorian Finney-Smith might make more sense playing alongside the core that you have, as opposed to, going out and trying to chase like a bigger fish. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that it's the defense that's definitely needed, and spacing. Like, you could get a point really quickly where if they traded Kevin Huerter for a guy that doesn't shoot great, even Kyle Kuzma is up and down a little bit. All of a sudden, you're looking around and like, oh, they don't have that much spacing on this team. You saw the jump specifically for Fox and Sabonis when Keegan got drafted, when Kevin was brought in, when Malik was brought in, all at the same time. And it's like, okay, all this spacing is great, and obviously helps two guys that really thrive in the paint. And Harrison Barnes has always been a really good 3-point shooter. Even if he could be a little up and down, you look at the end of the year and he's damn near 40% every time. So I think that you need to make sure whatever other guy you chase can shoot the ball really well. And I think still you go to that size defensively, right? You still need some length. Like, ideally you're Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby type of guy. And I know those are still like kind of big fish, but if we're talking dream sort of ideal fit as a complementary guy here, I think that the spacing or the shooting from whoever you may add becomes even more important as you're losing some and getting another guy that doesn't quite do that in DeMar. And you really do need defensive help. I still struggle to think that this team is going to flirt with top 10, top 15 defensively, even though they did it last year. So part of me questions that. But I think that it's still kind of a typical 3-and-D guy.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, there's obvious needs on this team, and they've shown reluctance to go out and find some of those needs for players that are so one-sided. One guy, you have like somebody like, even like, look at Davion Mitchell, who was on this team, and in my mind is a quite a top tier defensive talent, and probably will be for the remainder of his career in the NBA. But trying to bring along his offensive game as well to be able to keep him on the floor for extended minutes, or keep him on the floor for to utilize where he really excels, because they're not really built to where, like a team like the Celtics, where you're just a brilliant two-way team filled with players that are two-way players who go out there and top tier defense, and can go out there and have this harmonious offense as well. So everyone's trying to get to that, and that's why it's really hard to find players who can be impactful, that are top tier defensive players, but how do they mesh with the rest of the unit when they're not such great defensive players themselves? So I think they made strides in that regard last year. And this team organically did take some, moves up the ladder, if you will, for team defense, but I don't think it was enough. And I think majority of their shortcomings come because of lack of size. And we've seen how, big teams just come in here and tend to punish them. So it's going to be interesting to see how they eventually find some of that size, and how do they utilize that size, because bringing in someone like JaVale McGee didn't really work last year. Bringing in somebody who might be just one-sided, ultimately you're trying to find that Aaron Gordon, who can stretch the floor and who can add size and rim protection and all these things, that can mesh well with Sabonis. Because if you have someone like Sabonis, it's really hard to bring in somebody who's not going to stretch the floor and be somebody who's just literally moving the ball and playing this kind of 4-on-5 offense.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because at this point, you're really looking for like the fifth starter. You're not looking for like a third best player or fourth best player. I don't even know if you're looking for a fifth best player. I think you're looking for somebody who just fits better. And that's what leads me, like, when we have discussions about who might start for this team, it's why I always like kind of fall back on the fact that I think Keon Ellis is probably still one of the best options this team has. He's got a lot to prove, but I think that maybe you could find a better version of Keon Ellis, but at the 3 or the 4, that might help complete your roster a little bit more than it is right now. I don't know who that player is, and I don't know how you find that player or go get that player. But it seems like you probably don't have to chase a Brandon Ingram and a potential $35 to $40 million contract, and you don't need to go chase a a guy like Kyle Kuzma just to get the scoring, because you already have enough of that. So it tends to make me believe that this team, if they do chase somebody else, it could be more of a defensive 3-and-D specialist type, whether at whatever position, like preferably someone who plays the 3, the 4, the 5. Um, we're watching, Trey Lyles play for Team Canada, and for me, he's a piece that we kind of skip here a little bit. Um, I don't know why that is, because I think he's been super solid for them. But do you think that, like, these are the types of players that they're going to go after, more guys like that, or are you thinking more like traditional 3-and-D guys when you're looking at this team?
Probably more traditional 3-and-D. I think what you said pretty much of like a bigger Keon Ellis is really the ideal thing I feel like we're talking about here. I think these forwards, wings, that size is really needed. Right now, you're going to ask a lot out of Keegan Murray. When you play the Lakers, he's going to be the one matched up on Braun probably. And like, that's a tough assignment. I know that Harrison had okay moments doing stuff like that, I thought. But now he has more responsibility being Keegan, and his development in general is huge for this team. And we've talked about it before, but hopefully DeMar doesn't hinder that at all. I think that if anything, it should help, and it's more so on Keegan than anybody to make sure that he continues to be aggressive and take that next step. We've seen DeMar play second fiddle to Kobe White when Kobe White's having big games in Chicago. So I know that DeMar is willing to be that guy, but I think that everybody else, like Trey Lyles, is a guy that fits really well, that size that you're talking about, and a body that you could throw on LeBron sometimes. And now the fact that he's one of your better options, I think, does say something about the team defensively, but you need to have some of those. And the physicality that he brings, I think, can set the tone for the team. We've seen him be a little bit of an enforcer out there on a team full of nice guys in a way that I think sometimes they could use a little bit more fire. And we've seen Trey definitely bring that. And I think the positional versatility is really valuable as well. I think there could be lineups where, Keegan is playing the 3 with Trey at the 4. If you want DeMar at the 2 and Domas at the 5, and you can get some good size. You can also go with Trey Lyles at the 5, and you get a lot of lineup variance. And I think that Trey is a guy that deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, this team really only has 8 guys, maybe 8.5, with respect to Jordan McLaughlin, that in my mind right now, as the team is constituted, play. I mean, I don't really go beyond those 8-9 guys, and certainly there's a spot for a need. There's a need on this team, and I think, to answer your question, James, do they go for a 3-and-D? Do they go somewhere for like Trey Lyles? I think it's kind of like what I said with Harrison Barnes the past 2 years with Keegan Murray. It's like, unfortunately, this team is set up to where you almost need something better than. It's no disrespect to guys like Alex Len, Trey Lyles. I mean, what those guys have done has been serviceable, and I think both those players, outperformed even my expectations last season. But you still need to be better. You still need to be better than what those guys bring. And I think you can have those guys on your team, but you ultimately need something better, at least within the starting rotation or within a bulk minutes rotation that's going to take, some heat off of Sabonis, to where he doesn't have to gobble up every rebound, where you have some rim protection, have some size and athleticism. And if they can stretch the floor, then you're really cooking with grease and fire. So I just don't know who that is. I mean, certainly there, you always talk about someone like Cam Johnson or Kyle Kuzma. I think it's a little bit more simple than that. I think it's, if they can land somebody like that, that would be ultimately really good. I think that you still have question marks in terms of chemistry and is there enough balls to go around, but you just need someone who's capable. You don't need a chucker. And when you add someone like DeRozan, you're bringing in a guy that gets shots up. No one has to tell him to take a shot, and he's the one guy that we talk about the style of play and maybe getting back to the free form up and down play that they had this record-setting pace and scoring ability from over a year ago. Last season, they take a little bit of a back seat, and if they're trying to go back to that, can DeRozan push the pace? Can you find someone that can still run like them? We know DeRozan can dribble the shit out of the basketball, but ultimately make a play and usually come away with something that's pretty nice. So it's going to look different for sure, but how do you find one of those guys that fits that type of freeform offense? And yeah, it's gonna be interesting, man. You certainly know what they need, and we're all talking about the same thing in terms of what this team sorely needs. But how do you go and obtain that piece? How do you find it? It's going to be really tough.
Does it feel like we've been talking about the same exact piece for like 4 years?
Yeah, well, 2 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more than that. It goes back. Like,
Well,
we
yeah,
just
them being soft goes back a long ways. Them
yeah,
being
yeah.
the nice guys, but I do think like this team has made major strides in that regard. But yeah, ultimately it's still a pretty soft team. Um, you don't really have that hockey goon, and maybe the closest thing you have that is to Trey Lyles. You can't just be a thing in hockey goon though. Is in hockey that guy literally is on the floor for one reason, and in basketball, at least in today's game, you can't have that player. If you're going to be a good team, you can't just have one guy that does it, and you can't have that's the only thing he does. That guy has to be able to come out and provide a spark offensively, be something defensively, add to the chemistry, add to the physicality, be able to run. It's more than just being out there to fuck shit up.
I think basically you're describing Bobby Portis.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, you need a 3-and-D guy who will punch somebody in the face.
Right.
Yeah.
Crazy.
No.
Got to screw loose.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. If you guys were banking right now, if you were forced to make, let's say your starting lineup and your first 3 guys off the bench, what do you got for me?
Say that again. You're asking about what a starting rotation would look like?
Yeah, give me your starting lineup and your next.
Yeah, I'll
You
go
said
first.
yeah, you said 4 guys off the bench. You're 3.5, 4. I think we actually like the reason I'm asking you to do this exercise because I think we actually are missing someone. But go ahead.
We're missing somebody.
Well, no, go ahead. Like because you said you added Jordan McLaughlin as maybe the 9th guy, but
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's Sabonis, it's Murray, DeRozan, Herter, and Fox. To me, those are the starters right now, and could be the starters when I mean, there's possibility of that changing, but to me, those are the starters. And then you got Monk, Lyles, and Ellis, and then I think McLaughlin is the maybe not the everyday type of 9th player, but certainly one that factors to play the most.
okay.
And I take it we're just not counting Carter in this.
Well, yeah, I mean we can't
For now,
count Carter.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean who knows if he'll play this season at all.
Yeah,
I think he'll play this season, but certainly, I mean, gone till 2025, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, if he plays this season, we're talking about February, March. We're not talking about any time in the first 60 plus games.
Though I'll say this though, I mean, the thing that gives me the most encouragement, I mean, it's a shoulder, it's not a knee, it's not an Achilles, it's not something that's lower body to where like I as long as his shot is okay and as long as there's no setbacks with surgery, which sounds like everything has been successful, I think the rehab process is going to be fine for him. I don't think he's going to be too far behind the 8 ball there. And I think there's ways to keep him involved, which is going to be maybe even a good thing. I mean, this is not someone who's struggling with conditioning. It'll be interesting to see how he adapts. Certainly there's always a rookie wall, and maybe that rookie wall we don't see until his second year, but yeah, if they can bring him along slowly, and I'm pretty confident that he'll be able to play this season. I'm curious to see what type of spark he can provide, especially in his rookie season.
Yeah, when he's healthy in himself out there, I think that he actually could end up competing for that starting 2 spot. I think it's pretty wide open. If I had to pick a 5 right now, I'd probably go Keon Ellis over Kevin Herter. Like Fox, Ellis, Murray, DeRozan, and Sabonis. I do think that Kevin plays really well with the starters, though. And there's a lot of value. His shooting becomes even more important for the reasons I talked about earlier. And the pace is something that I think DeRozan could have to get used to a little bit. I believe the only times he was top 10 in pace were his first 2 years in the league when he was under Jay Triano, actually. And even in the half court, Mike Brown talked about it. Like they play really fast, not just full court, but half court. And sometimes DeRozan, likes to take a couple dribbles before he makes his move. And I think there could be an adjustment there. And
ball stopper.
Yeah, not necessarily, but sometimes. And think that Kevin's half-court movement, his pace is probably the most underrated aspect of his game. He's constantly sprinting through everything, full court, half court. So I think he's important there. But the defense, I probably would lean towards Keon, who I'm curious to see how this year goes for him, because he's going to be on scouting reports now. He's going to have to be able to counter things. And I think we saw some of those backdoor cuts and stuff of getting accustomed to that last year, but cleaning the glass, which does have a garbage time filter, only 27 attempts within 4 feet of the basket last year. Like, that's going to have to go up. Teams are going to run you off the line, and we'll see how that goes. But, if I go with Keon, so Fox, Keon, Murray, DeRozan, Sabonis, then you go Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter, and Trey Lyles, I think.
Okay.
And probably, McLaughlin plays a bit, but McLaughlin and Len, I think both will function on the team, but essentially just playing the minutes that Fox and Sabonis are not. So 13 minutes a night. And I think they're fine for that role.
Yeah, I think if I were to gauge right now, I think Sean is probably right what they would pencil in right now. But I think when it's all said and done, Keon Ellis might be the guy who starts at the shooting guard spot. Either way, you have to have somebody who can shoot the three next to DeRozan and Sabonis and Fox, for that matter. Because I don't know, like, we can hope that De'Aaron Fox is able to repeat his shooting percentage from three from last season, but like, I'm not positive that that's even when he did. I mean, even like if you track his game by game, there was some erratic shooting from three either way. So for him to get to like 37+%, there were months where he shot 43 and there were months where he shot 22 or 25 or 28%. It wasn't just like a smooth sailing thing. So I think you're going to need the shooting, but I would also, the reason why I kind of side with Brenden on the starting lineup with Keon instead of Herter is because it doesn't matter who it is, they're your fifth option. And I think Kevin Herter alongside Malik Monk off the bench is a better like 1-2 scoring punch as your second unit. I think Kevin Herter would have more opportunity with the second unit than he would with the first unit. And I think I also would point out that none of us believe that Malik Monk is starting at the 2, right?
No, I don't. But I'll say this. I mean, you talk about second unit, like they never play first and second units. You know what I mean? Like there's always a blend of guys.
Yeah, staggering.
So, like to me, it becomes that player for like. I think there's two trains of thought. It's what would I start and what do I think they'll start. Because what I start is a little bit different than what I said. But I will say that Kevin Herter's in both of my starting lineups, and that's only because he's on the team. And he as Brenden laid out, provides shooting, plays well with those starters to begin with. And I'll add another thing. He's one of the few players on this team, and I'm trying to think of another one that even comes close, that his confidence takes a major, major hit if he's not in the right headspace. And for him to be in the right headspace is for him to play with those starting unit, get off to a good start. So I'm trying to, if you're going to try and get the best out of Kevin Herter, it's going to be with him as a starter. And I think Mike Brown knows that. And especially now, I mean, he just became more valuable. And we talked about it last week. Like you don't have as much shooting around you as you once did from the perimeter. So now he's a lot more valuable to the Sacramento Kings than he was on July 1st. So I want to see what he's capable of. I think I don't think he's going to be able to replicate what he did in the first year here. I mean, that was kind of a career season. And as he so eloquently pointed out at the end of last season, he had his worst season. So, just getting back, returning to form, seeing that shot go down a little bit, but also providing more scoring opportunities with more playmakers around him, I think is exciting. If I'm Kevin Herter, I'm coming into this camp not only motivated, but I'm excited by what's around me. I mean, yeah, I've got a guy like DeMar DeRozan who's not going to be shy away from taking shots, and certainly we've seen what Malik Monk does in wanting to find scoring opportunities. But both of those guys share the ball, and I think that's what was going to make them so valuable or make Kevin Huerter so valuable, and those guys especially so valuable to his success. So if he can just get some shots to go down, I think we're not even having this discussion much longer.
Yeah, I would also like Brendan. You pointed out like Keon Ellis that they're going to game plan for Keon Ellis. If Keon Ellis is starting alongside De'Aaron Fox, DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, and Keegan Murray, he is not even in the game plan at all for the opposing defense. They're not even going to guard him at all from start to finish. At least in my opinion, like you might have a guy there every once in a while, but it's going to be all about trying to stop the other 3 big time scorers and then hope that Keegan Murray doesn't light you on fire from the corner. So like, again, maybe I'm wrong there, but I think whoever is with that group, number one, they have to bring something other than scoring and shooting. They have to bring shooting for sure, but they have to bring something else. And you don't need playmaking because you already have your 3 of your 4 best passers / playmakers on the floor. So what do you need? And that's where like the defensive acumen of Keon Ellis like stands out to me as someone that maybe you're right, Sean, that I would start, but maybe not necessarily that they would start going into the season. Either way, I think it should be interesting. Go ahead.
What about closing lineups? Is it just Malik in that 2 spot essentially?
I think so. I think you could see a 3 to 4 guard lineup. I mean, we're talking Mike Brown. He knows he's got a guy like DeRozan who can play multiple positions, and I wouldn't totally rule out Keon Ellis from that. I think there's a lot of situational moments. The thing that I think Keon Ellis took the biggest step in, and we talked about, how well he is defensively, but when he shoots from the perimeter, like I have ultimate faith that it's going in. I mean, he takes great looks. His shot selection isn't forced usually, and he's efficient. But I think when you've got the likes of De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, and DeMar DeRozan on the floor, you're not really looking for offensive spark because those guys got you taken care of.
No, but you need someone who's a knockdown.
Right.
Yeah. So,
but I do think that he's going to be fourth quarter. I just don't know if it'll be necessarily that closing lineup, that final, minute and a half to or 30 seconds to a minute and a half, that kind of thing, tight game. But I do think, Malik Monk certainly, and that's the best part about having, this team and the way they have their depth right now is, your starters don't mean they're going to be your leading minutes. I mean, Malik Monk is going to play as a starter.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Outside of Jordan Ford, Keon Ellis led the Sacramento Kings last year in 3-point percentage at 41.7%. The next step was Harrison Barnes, who's gone. Kevin Huerter was all the way down at 9th at 36.1. And I know you're going to have to try to make him keep you honest. Like Keon Ellis is going to have to shoot, but I think he also he might be the most reliable guy that they have for that position when you factor in his ability to play defense and his ability to shoot the 3. So
where was Keegan?
I don't know. Keegan was number 11 at 35.8. Malik Monk, number 12
on the team
at
right?
35% on the team.
Jeez.
Yeah. But that's also factoring in Jordan Ford. It's factoring Kessler Edwards, who shot 38.5%, which is kind of a surprise. Trey Lyles, 38.4. Domas, 37.9. Sasha Vezenkov, again, who's gone 37.5. Fox at 36.9. Davion Mitchell, 36.1. So,
Kessler probably took like 4 shots.
Hey, there was a game against Dallas where he went 2 of 2, and I clipped it, and a bunch of Dallas fans have been reposting it recently, saying that they just got the next great thing over there.
He shot 52 threes on the season, 20 of 52. Yeah, more than you might have thought. Domas shot 87. So, yeah.
Oh, I thought this was for fourth quarter.
Oh, for fourth quarter? Oh, no.
I thought you were talking fourth quarter. Okay.
No, overall. No, overall, Keon Ellis is the best 3-point shooter on the team last year. I don't know if that holds up over an 82 game schedule. He didn't play 82 games and he didn't have the pressure on him at all times when he was in there. But I still think he's going to be the guy, in all honesty, that might get wide open looks because I think teams would even, still hedge a little bit towards Herter, which might help the other guys get loose a little bit easier. So I don't know. There's pluses and minuses to starting both those guys, but certainly Kevin Herter gives you better size at the position and play the 2 and the 3, or Keon Ellis is more of just a 3 and D 2, right? So yeah, and then McLaughlin, Jalen McDaniels, like Alex Len, those guys, whether they're in the rotation or play spot minutes here and there, like who knows? But at least I think those will be matchup based issues that we see those guys partially during the season. Where are you guys at with go ahead?
No, I was gonna say, you think of even Alex Len last year, even when they had the likes of JaVale McGee. I'm trying to think of 48 games overall for Len. Without maybe a little bit of an injury that he experienced, he might have played 8 more games, maybe 6 more games. So
he didn't
it's
miss
not
that
like
much time due to injury.
Right. It wasn't. Yeah. He had a little bit of a foot thing, but it wasn't terrible. But
yeah, he's like reliable out there. His on-off numbers are great. He just does what you want, really, from a backup big.
But even still,
stupid.
Yeah, but even still, it's like wasn't an everyday player. So only appearing in 48 games, it's literally coaching decisions. So I think all 3 of those guys that you mentioned, with maybe a little bit more of a nod to McLaughlin, because I feel like he'll play more of a role, especially since Devin Carter's not ready yet.
Jordan, and Colby Jones, not ready yet.
No, and he's more of, and McLaughlin more of a true point guard, like, who is a guy who doesn't turn the ball over, scrappy, plays both ways, and really improved his 3-point shooting. So, I think he can have a nice fit on this team.
Yeah, he was crazy from 3 last year. It's something wild. Like I want to say like 48%. Again, it's on limited shots, but 48.3 from the field, 47.2% from 3, and that's on 1.6 attempts per game. So yeah, he really did work on his 3. And what did he take? He took 89, 42 of 89, same amount of threes as Mr. Sabonis last year.
Mr.
You got yeah. So I was gonna ask, like, the vibe. Do you think that they like for what they did this season, this off season, you think this feels good? Like it kind of feels like there is a vibe going with this group where they didn't stand pat. They actually did go out and make a substantial upgrade. I'm sure everybody, called Harrison Barnes and said thank you and goodbye. But like getting a guy like DeMar DeRozan has to get a little bit of a bounce in your step and maybe even show other players out there that this might be a spot that you can go and land as a free agent maybe in the future. Do you think that that's going to play at all into the way the build up to the season goes?
Yeah, I think that it's last year felt a little weird running it back with the exact same guys. And I feel like there were some that maybe wanted a larger role or things didn't go quite the way that you would have hoped, like Kevin Herter being the obvious one. I'm still kind of curious to see how that situation ends up playing out. But that's the only question mark in my mind if we're talking to just the chemistry, the vibe of the team. I think that DeRozan, by all accounts, is a good leader, a guy that clearly the other players wanted there along with the coaching staff. And I think there's value in that. There's things he can teach to a lot of these guys. And he does have a leadership aspect where he seems fairly level-headed and able to communicate a lot of stuff with his teammates. So I do think that it's beneficial to have some new faces and a new feeling around the locker room. Might get your energy up a little bit, get hopeful. But when you run it back with the exact same guys, and sure, it was a decent year, obviously breaking the drought and everything, but still needed to continue to grow from there. And it just wasn't really happening that much. That I think that caused a little bit of weirdness at times. And I do think that bringing in a new face, obviously when it's a player caliber of DeMar DeRozan, player and person, should, leave you with a good vibe around the team.
Sean?
It's exactly what you said, but it's also, it's not a tertiary piece. He may be one of your 2 best players now. This is it's a direction change. So you didn't sacrifice much, but it injects a different feeling. I don't want to say it's different life, because I don't feel like this team, went through some slogs to where all of a sudden, when you have Malik Monk on your team, that doesn't really happen. you know, uh, and I feel like this team handles some of the dog days of the season a little bit better than maybe previous seasons or years have, and maybe even that stretch where every January, typically it's January, maybe February, where Fox kind of goes through some things and doesn't maybe look to be his best, or maybe the foot comes off the gas a little bit. I feel like they handle those a little bit better, but now, I mean, it's just you have such talent on the team, a talent that's unmatched. I mean, with like somebody adding a talent like DeMar DeRozan, even at 35 years old, having that type of talent who's still relevant in the league, who's still putting up incredible numbers, and means so much to any team he plays on. Now he's on your team, and you're hoping to see the same type of pop from him, especially given what he was able to contribute last year. And to me, it just comes to simple as, can the chemistry work? Can the fit work? What happens defensively? And is there enough shots to go around? And that's what's so great about what Mike Brown's offense is it's such an equal opportunity thing for all these players that, as long as the ball doesn't stick too much, and of course you're looking at DeRozan in that regard, if you can keep this, I think they're going to be really, really an entertaining team. And I think the players know this just as any player that's on this team is going to be excited with the addition of DeMar DeRozan. That to me, I don't think anybody looks at that addition and goes, oh man, that's, even selfishly, like if you're looking at somebody like her, if you're Herter or Monk, or if you're like, oh, is it going to take shots from me? You don't care at that point because you got better.
I definitely think some guys are going to care like 25 games into the season, when the reality of what adding a guy who shoots like, I don't know, what was it, like 8 more times per game than the guy that left. There will come a point where it's like, okay, I am losing shots here. Like, it's really difficult to create 8 more shots to just make up for what he's going to take. So that means that somebody's going to lose, and actually probably means that 2 or 3 people are going to lose like 2 to 3 shots. And that's not easy. So we'll have to see how that works out.
Well, and if you're winning, first of all, if anyone does get in their feelings about that and they're winning, then those are you don't want them on your team. I mean, that's where cancer starts. But I will say, I think people might hear the term chuck in and more shots for DeRozan, but so many of them are going to come from the free throw line. Like, that guy has a knack from getting to the free throw line, and especially if they're playing an up and down style, I don't think it's really going to take too many shots away from some guy. Like, there is a world that exists where you can play an up and down system. He can fit into that system. A lot of his attempts coming from the free throw line, I think you can mask it pretty well.
Well, I would like to flip that back on you. I would tell you that not only does DeMar DeRozan take 17 shots per game, he also takes 8 free throws per game, which means he's taking another, I mean, a couple of those are going to be and ones, but that's still like probably another 3 shots on top of it. This is a dude who, between free throws and just standard, field goals, takes upwards of 20, offensive opportunities per game.
Right.
Yeah. And again, Harrison Barnes, not only did he average like 8.9 shots, but he also averaged like 2.3 or free throws per game. So like DeMar DeRozan he's going to take up a lot of something from somebody. And, again, I think he'll probably have to take probably 2 less shots per game with the Kings. But I also think that, Kevin Herter will have to take 2 less shots. And I think Malik Monk might have to take 1 less shot. I think Domantas Sabonis might have to take 1 less shot. And I think, De'Aaron Fox might have to take 1 less shot. And we might get there if we do all that. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that all balances out.
I think De'Aaron specifically is a really interesting aspect of that, because it's essentially a contract year for the guy, and playing to try to get that supermax. And it's like, so I don't know how much I'm going to expect him to be the one to sacrifice. And I think that he's always been a team player, willing to do it. Like when they were trying to make it work with Tyrese, there was a whole article about how he was going to play the 2 guard Like De'Aaron's down to do what it takes, it seems like, to try to make things work, but there is that aspect. And I think the other end of it is that if you do have less offensive responsibility, we saw this guy lead the league in steals last year, which it doesn't say everything defensively, but I think that he did take a big jump there, and he might be able to exert even more energy or focus more on that end of the floor, and they probably need it as well. So I think he's an interesting, there's kind of both sides to look at it when it comes to De'Aaron's impact in it.
Yeah, Brenden, we talked about that on this podcast. Where it was is do the Kings really want De'Aaron Fox being a guy that averages 30 points or taking the types of steps to be that type of player? And is that in the best interest of the team? And I think clearly when you add someone like DeRozan, yeah, that might center him a little bit more away from that. So I think but to your point, will be. I think the hope there is in the best interest of the team. Does it impact him being more of a defensive player? Does it impact a greater roster balance? And then James, DeRozan's going to play. I think that's what's going to be the interesting. There has been an evolution to DeMar DeRozan, but I also feel like he's coming to arguably his most talented situation than he's ever been. I mean, Chicago, I think, had such upside, but the reality didn't turn into that. I think there's upside here with Sacramento, and I think the results will be better. I think also you're looking at a guy who is very aware of his lack of postseason success. So I think all he cares about coming into this situation is what can he do to help win? What can he do to help and assist winning? So I think if there was seeing a guy like DeMar DeRozan take upwards of 24 or 20 shots a game, I just don't think you're going to see that from him in this situation. Make no mistake, he's going to be a key cog. He's going to be a primary scoring weapon, but I think it'll look a little less than what you've seen in years past.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think Mike Brown has a very, very complicated job in front of him. And I think having Jay Triano is a really good thing for him because Triano is, of course, DeMar DeRozan's first head coach in the league and can design some stuff to get him open. But I think we might see like those 2 years in San Antonio where,
Right.
where DeRozan's numbers dropped to about 15 attempts per game. That seems more in line, 6 free throw attempts per game, 5.7.
Well, and how about this too?
6.6.
And with that in mind too, not to cut you off, I apologize, but like if he can get into a free flowing system, if he can look, you're still going to run the ball through Domantas Sabonis, and if you can push the pace, your offense should be able to generate more shot opportunities by virtue of the pace that you play with. You look at the way they played in Chicago, they wanted to play a different style, but it was very much a slow it down type of offense. And it had to be, especially because of the defense or the injuries that they were facing for the greater part of 2 years. But Vucevic is not a fast, run up and down the floor type of guy. Sabonis runs like a deer next compared to him. So I think that they can, up the pace more than maybe. I don't think it's going to be what it was in the first year, but I think you can watch. So I think you can watch DeMar's minutes. I don't think he needs to play the minutes that he was playing last year in order to be successful on this team. And I think you're going to be able to shorten his minutes and let him flourish in a system that might be a little bit faster.
Okay. We're going to teach a 35-year-old dog new tricks right here on the KINGSBEAT podcast. Okay, let's get to the business of basketball. No sound effects, Brenden?
I thought about it, I'm workshopping new ones mentally, so we'll test it out next one.
You didn't test one out. You just let it go silent.
No, yeah, I just, playing it out in my head, and it didn't go how I wanted it to. So we'll get back to you next episode. I'll think of something new.
Well, you let the people down.
Oh, you are not one to talk. I don't know what the hell you're opening your mouth for. You could do something one of these times.
Okay, let's get to the business of basketball. We kind of glossed over it in the beginning of the show, but the Kings did bring Boogie Ellis in, and I think that there's something to like rewarding a player who plays well in summer league and giving him at least it's an Exhibit 10 contract, I think, which would at least give him an opportunity to show up to training camp, maybe get some extra bonus money. Maybe the Kings go out and acquire him in the G League draft, that type of stuff. Then again, maybe he makes a team. Who knows? The Kings do have the ability to go up to 21 roster spots during preseason. And as of right now, they're at 18, so they still have a couple more that they can do here. But I think sort of my question is the way that the Kings have handled their G League over the last couple of years. To me, again, last season I didn't love bringing in a bunch of 28-year-old dudes. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that Damian Jones, Chimezie Metu, Mason Jones, like they're all of these guys who earned their way into two-way contracts. There are guys that like Keon Ellis that not only earned their way into a two-way contract, but are earning their way up to the main team. Both Chimezie Metu and Damian Jones both earned their way onto the main team and actually got full roster spots. Um, how big do you think that is that the Kings are when they're going into whether it's the undrafted free agent market or they're going into sort of this level of talent, this next level of guys that are trying to fight their way into the league? How good do you think it is for the program that the Kings have shown a pathway to get to the NBA from the Stockton Kings?
Yeah, I think it matters. I think it makes your spot a little bit more appealing when guys have options and are debating where they want to go. Now, there's a lot of things that factor in, and I don't imagine that would be at the top of the list necessarily, but you certainly look better than a team like Portland that didn't even have a G League team until last year, a year before. So I think that showing that you do value it, and there being examples of guys that have gotten promotions from that spot of Jordan Ford or Keon Ellis, even in some of those situations, obviously started a little bit higher there with a two-way, but I think that it just helps your pitch a little bit, makes you a little bit more appealing to these guys. But I still think there's other factors that would matter more, of looking at a depth chart and thinking, oh, maybe I could actually make my way into this. But knowing that they are paying attention to their G League team and put some care, some thought into it. Even the coaches, I think you could say the same thing. We've seen a couple coaches work their way up, get good experience there, and allow that to translate. So I think just showing guys that you're paying attention does help. And I think that there's more important things when guys are making decisions on where to go, but I do think it helps you out a little bit there.
Yeah, they've done a really good job. I mean, they've embraced their G League better than they have when the whole system, when it was D League, when it first started and they had an affiliate. I mean, it's been an evolution. But let's be honest, like there are success stories all throughout the league, and the G League is no longer looked at as it's a true minor league system, and there's going to be a number of success stories that come from there. And if you can stand out in any way, shape, or form, whether that leads to a opportunity with the parent club, with the Kings themselves, if you're in Stockton, or somewhere else, in the case of someone like Gabe Vincent, who was in Stockton, went to Miami, and now has a lucrative contract with the Lakers. You're going to be noticed. It's not going to just go for naught. And can you do it quick enough? Can you do it in a way of, here's this impact I'm having on the floor, and I'm still young enough. I'm 23, 24, 25, and I'm not 28, 29, to where all of a sudden, if you're 28, 29, sometimes teams will be like, okay, too old. We're going to go for somebody younger. I think that's where it becomes interesting. And in a case like someone like Boogie Ellis, you're rewarding his play, and you're not only rewarding his play, you're rewarding his style of play. I mean, this guy, his activity was everywhere. That was exactly what they were looking for. They had someone like Keon Ellis and Colby Jones out there looking for, how can you be a playmaker? How can you play with an elevated role? How can you, really kind of dominate out there? And then you get a guy like Boogie Ellis, who goes out there with a nothing to lose kind of situation, just plays his style of game, and good things happen. And it was hard to take your eye off him because he was so impactful on both ends of the floor. So I think Stockton was already a check mark for what he was, for what his future had in front of him. I think based on his play, he might have had some opportunities that could have come his way, and now getting a invitation, a possible roster spot, if you will, to be able to compete for, at least in training camp for it, definitely gives him not only more money in the pocketbook, but kind of the confidence that this team kind of believes in what he was able to put on film, and kind of provides a pathway for him to make a team. I don't know that I would bet on it, but as you mentioned, James, when you can bring in the likes of 21 players, the Kings had 2 summer league teams. They leave no stone unturned in this regard and trying to find talent and make your team better. So kudos to them, kudos to Boogie Ellis, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, again, I think opportunity is something that the players are looking at. Like there is a way like to get to the bigs from there. And a lot of organizations can't say that. I think everyone should go play for the Memphis Grizzlies because chances are they're going to play with like 4 players on the season, and everyone who's on their G League squad is going to get a 10-day.
Maybe Brooklyn as well. Like, would that be the East Coast version of it?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's going to be a little rough. Yeah, I don't feel for Jordy there. Jordy and David Stolkes and Dutch Gately all are going to be like, all right, hey Dutch, we need you to get these guys up to speed now, like all of them. So, all right, let's wrap this thing up. What do we got for final thoughts, Brenden? You want to hit us with your final thoughts?
Yeah, not to compete with you, James, but I may or may not be co-hosting a radio show tomorrow from 10 to 2 for what it's worth with my guy, Chris Watkins. So you could swap between us and the insiders, but nothing too special. I'm headed out to Arizona here soon for a little boat activities, I guess, with my dad's side. And
Havasu?
Yeah, out there near Havasu. It's like Parker. It's technically connected to Havasu, but yeah.
Havasu adjacent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, fair enough. That's about it, though.
I think if you're going to Havasu or even that part of Arizona, that's all you should be doing outside is staying at the lake. Because if you're not at the lake, what are you doing with your life?
I should be a couple shades darker.
Yeah, we have the problem here. You guys can come up and boat any day you want. But the smoke comes up.
Can I let's be honest though. With respect to Lake of the Pines, it is no Havasu, if you know what I mean.
No, there's not that aspect. But you wouldn't be out there with your stepmom and your dad and your siblings either, Sean. So
that's not a problem. That's not a problem for me, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Sean, what do you got for final thoughts?
I have no idea.
No final thoughts?
Actually, yeah. I finally, since I said I would share that story I did with Jared McCain. That's on my on the socials out there, or even at fox40.com. It was kind of cool he's such a different type of guy. It's a refreshing type of guy, but it's also interesting for him to see how he is going to balance this aspirations of being a superstar NBA player with what he currently is, which is a superstar influencer, social media celebrity. And he embraces it. Like, he loves when people, even competitors, call him TikTok, thinking that it's like an insult, and he like embraces that. So, but to see someone like him who, comes from his NBA journey, started in Sacramento, and he's still got Sacramento roots, and for a guy who's been away from Sacramento from a living standpoint since he was 14 years old, who still has family, it's interesting. And guys, I think you guys know this, Brenden, I don't know so much as James does because he's from kind of this community, but every time I do stories with a lot of guys that come from Sacramento, like it's always fascinating to me how much they wear Sacramento as a badge of honor. Like, it's tatted on them sometimes. It's just like this underdog or this overlooked mentality. And I had him kind of explain that. And he literally is like, oh, you're always playing second fiddle to the Bay or LA. And literally he went to LA to make his basketball dreams come true. So, go to Southern California, go to Duke for one season, and then end up as a lottery pick or right outside the lottery at that point. So anyway, just interesting to see, to catch up with him. And I have another guy I'll be catching up with later this week is Jalen Wells from the Memphis Grizzlies, the Folsom native. So he was a second-round pick with the Grizzlies, and went to Folsom High School. That's where McCain said he would have gone had he remained in Sacramento and not gone to down to Southern California. So just keeping up with all the locals and outside of Niners camp, and we got UC Davis and Sac State who just kicked off training camp or fall camp this week, and you got football and high school football right around the corner. So lots of football on the horizon for me.
Very cool. Let's see. Final thoughts from James. I told Brenden before, Sean, you hopped on, but I'm not quite sure why, but I'm throwing out the first pitch at the River Cats game on Saturday night. So if anyone wants to come out,
Don't bounce it.
6:37 start. I've had shoulder problems since early January, so we'll see how it goes. I have been doing a throwing program with my oldest. That's been fun.
I was going to say, you're practicing.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, there was nothing left on my shoulder like 2 weeks ago. At least now it's a little broken up, and then the elbow went out. It's been a little rough. But yeah, hopefully I won't bounce it. So if you're bored on Saturday and you want to come out to the River Cats game, I don't think it's supposed to be 106 or anything. It's going to be hot. But come out and do that. Outside of that, I don't know. It's been a long summer. It's hot. I'm ready. I'm ready to get back to work a little bit here with Kings coverage. So that's all I got.
I did watch a movie, by the way.
Oh no!
Oh, stop the presses!
Yeah.
No, you didn't. What is it?
Wolverine. Went to the theaters and everything. May or may not have.
Do not spoil anything
for half a second, but it was good. It was good. From
I
what
have
I was
not got
awake
to
for,
see
it was
yet.
pretty good and funny.
That's it's fun. For as many movies, I don't know that I'm going to be seeing it. I will see it eventually. Comic book movies and me just don't really get along very well. But I did see Longlegs. If anyone wants a twisted movie,
I think you told us that last week. Yeah.
Woo. Incredible. I don't know that I loved it, but boy, Nicolas Cage performance in that movie the acting's pretty top shelf.
Really? Huh.
Oh man, just wild. And it's the director. I don't know if I mentioned this. Oz Perkins. That's Anthony Perkins' son. Anthony Perkins, famously from Psycho, Brenden, which Psycho was a Alfred Hitchcock movie back in the day. Sure. One of the scariest movies from back in the day. So you should watch that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Psycho's incredible.
That predates me, Brenden. I'm just giving you an example of some movies that were before me that I still took the time to take a look at.
Psycho 2 might have been the first horror film I ever saw.
The sequel? You saw the sequel?
Well, yeah, Psycho 2. Yeah. It's crazy.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I highly recommend. The original Psycho is nuts. The Psycho in the early 80s is nuts as well. I think there's more than that now.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, scary stuff. Okay, I think that's going to do it for this edition of the KINGSBEAT podcast. We are working on a virtual happy hour for next week. Hopefully we can figure that one all out, and I'll send out dates and everything else this weekend. Outside of that, thanks for tuning in. If you're watching here on the YouTube and don't mind, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, give us a rating and review, all that stuff, all that fun stuff. So for Fox 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I am James Hammond, Kings out of ESPN 1320, the Kings Beat. We'll see you next week.